Today's big story is the U.S. announcing an end to waivers for countries importing Iranian oil, causing oil to jump to a 5-month high. It's all an effort to pressure Iran economically while protecting American security. To former National Security Advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney, John Hanna. Great to see you, John.
Hi, David.
Besides oil spiking today about 3%, what are some of the other economic risks here?
Well, listen, I think the big risk for the United States is that the Iranians give up their policy of patience in the face of the United States' decision to get out of the nuclear deal. We are squeezing and squeezing the Iranians. They are in real economic crisis. And the question is, are they just going to continue to try and wait out the Trump administration, or could we see them to begin to really try and fight back surreptitiously under the table in ways that give them plausible deniability?
Now, let me just be clear here. Are you talking about terrorism enacted by through their surrogates, or what?
For sure. There's things they can do in Saudi Arabia against oil infrastructure there using disaffected Shiite populations. We know from the Iraq War the way that they use Shiite proxies in Iraq or in Syria now to go after our 5,000 to 7,000 troops that we've still got in theater. There are things that they could clearly do via terrorism, either in Europe or in...
You haven't mentioned Hezbollah, I mean, which essentially controls Lebanon, and they have done things overseas. They had a terrible bombing in Argentina years ago, which killed dozens of people. So, I mean, there are a lot of tools they can use. But let me think to the positive for a second. And there is a positive element here as well, which is that maybe there will be a protest movement similar to the one that we saw at the beginning of the Obama administration. Of course, Obama didn't support that movement. We clearly would. Is that a possibility?
Yes, I think that's certainly a possibility, David. And any of these downside possibilities, I just think the administration needs to be aware of them and have planned for them accordingly. But yes, this is a fundamental choice that the administration is putting to the Iranians. Either we will cripple your economy, or you can come back to the negotiating table and start to negotiate a better deal with the United States that addresses all of Iran's horrible, malign activities that they're causing.
What do you think is more likely to happen?
I think there's a good chance that the Iranians only, 18 months away from a presidential election, they still may decide to sit tight and try and wait out Donald Trump and hope that they get a new Democratic president come 2020.
Interesting. Well, we haven't talked about the pressure on those people like China, for example, or Iran, those countries. I think there are 5 or 6 countries that are having their waiver taken away. South Korea, Japan, Turkey are included. If they continue to try to get oil from the Iranians, and there's a whole history of oil embargoes trying to be evaded, sometimes very successfully, if they do that, we catch them. What do we do to them?
Well, I think clearly this democratically sword of the threat of economic sanctions and being cut off from the American financial system and use of the dollar is going to be a powerful deterrent for a large group of companies, particularly in our allies, Japan and South Korea. And even in the Chinas and Indias and Turkeys, if they've got companies that are continuing to get oil from Iran, this puts them in a position to say, hey, the risks have gone up dramatically. We need to negotiate some serious discounts with you Iranians if we're going to continue to take any of their oil. So either way, the Iranian economy is going to be battered. And the question is, how long can the Iranian people sit there and take this before turning on that regime and seeing some real fractures and instability inside of Iran domestically?
Final question, John. Oil embargoes, as you well know, don't always work too well. We saw that happen with Iraq when Saddam Hussein was in power. The UN thing morphed into oil for food, which was a real debacle. It was just a terrible situation. There will be leaks in this embargo, right?
Yes, no question there will be leaks, but nobody is going to take market price to take the risk of going up against U.S. sanctions to take Iranian oil. So the Iranians will lose. The humanitarian situation in Iran is something that we do need to seriously consider because people are hurting very bad. We've just got to make sure that that humanitarian channel that we have that allows Iran to get some access to goods for its people to relieve them of the suffering that they're facing facing,
Right.
that continues. So Iran can't play on the mercy of the international
Right.
community and the goodwill of Americans.
I agree with you, but then again, we have the example of oil for food, which was that program that the UN
disaster.
initiated with Iraq, which was a disaster. So, Lord knows what's going to happen. Good to see you, John. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, David. Pleasure.